So the next one is from Silverfin on Gen AI by Ken Bastiaans, who is the Director of Special Projects and Innovation, and also our own Kais, who is the ML Tribe Tech Lead for Devoteam G Cloud. So please welcome them on stage, and then I leave the floor to them, of course.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. It's a real honor for me to speak here and share some of, let's say, some experiences we've had at Silverfin with using GCP. Is this on loud enough for everybody? Everybody? Yes? All right, great. So my name is Ken Bastiaans. I will talk a little bit about what we do at Silverfin with artificial intelligence on GCP, and also a bit how I see or might see a bit going forward how all companies can use AI and specifically from Google in their own company. A bit about myself. I started a machine learning company 2017. So we were focused on building artificial intelligence models for our customers on whatever infrastructure they were using, being GCP, Azure, AWS. At the same time, in 2018, we started our own, so that was Boltzmann at the time, the machine learning company. We started our own sort of AI plugin for the Silverfin platform. That became very successful, so we built our own AI product that was fully integrated in Silverfin. We used GCP for building out that product, and then we were acquired in 2021, and the whole team by that time, we were about 20 people, got acquired by Silverfin, and I became the director of AI at Silverfin, and recently I moved to a new role, director of special projects and innovation. Sorry. Well, it's especially the abbreviation is DSPY, which that's what I like. And if I have to tell you what I do, I have to kill you, you know, sort of. From the beginning, what we I'm gonna maybe start with. Well, maybe this one. We started at Boltzmann and then at Silverfin as well with GCP, and it's very similar to what Antonio, I'm not sure if he's still here, was mentioning in the previous talk as well. If you are a startup, if you want to build out your first business, you want to focus. And you want to just use the tools and not have to think about too much about which tools you use. You want to focus on what can you add from the business value. And which is why we started with GCP, because at the time it was sort of the lean and mean sort of offering in GCP, what you could do with it. And we used just those services that we wanted to. And then I think other people as well from were mentioning it here as well. I think Koen also, if you want to then scale up, then you have everything ready. Because you can only build your foundations once. It's impossible to every year start tearing down your house and redo your foundations. I'm gonna really skip this slide, but I'm gonna come back to that. Why do I added this slide here? And that's, I think, is important. Is that what do we do with artificial intelligence at Silverfin? I will have to explain you, because who has ever heard of Silverfin? Ah, okay, that's nice to hear. I was expecting less. It's 10%, let's say. So Silverfin is an accounting platform, a post-accounting platform that connects to all, let's say, 40 or 50 accounting bookkeeping software, and that does all the automation of the compliance and prepares everything for advisory services for accountants. It's fully in the cloud. It was already in the cloud from day one. It's built on GCP. But in the same way that Silverfin is not, let's say, selling cloud computing, we are also not selling AI. So let me explain that a little bit. Accountants, they come to Silverfin because they want to have the cloud experience. They want to be always online. It's just a technology that just happens to be the right technology for them to do their job, to always have the latest data from, it doesn't matter which bookkeeping software, to always be wherever you can work, to always integrate all the other systems, to automatically file with the government, etc., which is why you need cloud computing. And that's the same with AI. The add-ons that we have built initially with Boltzmann, now at Silverfin, being the Silverfin Assistant in our case, people buy the Silverfin Assistant for all the added value that it brings. They buy the mapping tool for all the value that it brings. They don't care whether it's built on natural language processing, whether it's built on advanced machine learning models in the background, whether, to say a bit maybe silly, they don't care if there's 1,000 people typing it behind the screens or if it's an advanced AI model. They buy the value. And if you want to sell the value, in our case for accountants, that is selling time savings. So it's maybe a bit strange that I say this here in this room, because it's more of a technology sort of a conference today. But I believe that if you want to have the best use of technology, don't look so much at the technology, but look at what the technology brings. And so if you want to use AI which is what we do, you have to look at what is the business value that AI brings. And the easiest thing to sell is always saving some time. And that's maybe an important thing, because what we do in Silverfin with saving that time is we don't automate. So we have some tasks that might say take an hour for an accountant earlier. And if you let's say it's a simple task, you could automate it with some, let's say, script, but some more things is you need to have some judgment or some natural language processing. You need to have some reasoning behind it, then you need to have AI. But we do not reduce that task to 0 minutes. We reduce that task from, say, 1 hour to 1 minute. We still let the user be in charge and say, okay, if this comes out of it, is that still what you want? And that's the thing. So again, we are not selling cloud. We are not selling AI. We are selling AI products driven by AI. But that's just the technology that just happens to be behind it. And I wanted to focus that, because if we then go back to, let's say, what we use at Silverfin, this is just in the AI team. There's just, I was actually tired of copy pasting it, so we do some more of that. We started small and scaling, and that's the same thing. We want to focus with the AI team, with the whole Silverfin. We want to focus of what value do we bring, and not what's the solution, the let's say the technical thing. Which is why we use as much as possible services, because with GCP, we don't want to think about managing too much a Kubernetes or any storages or any whatever artifacts or queries, etc. Why? Let's use a service that does that for us, so we can focus on what can we bring with those technology to in our case the accountant. Maybe I'm going to add some 2 lessons learned that we had. From this slide, and that's the Vertex AI. So we, as I said earlier, we were from the beginning machine learning company. So we're doing, initially that didn't exist yet. Let's say 6 years ago, ML Ops, or it was very new. So we were sort of figuring out. I think AWS and Azure were a bit earlier. I think GCP started with AI architecture. We were looking into that. We were still rolling our own ML ops with DVC and ML flow, sort of. We built our own. And then actually together with Devoteam, they said, okay, we have this new Vertex AI. In the beginning, we thought it's kind of new, but then last year they come to us and say, okay, now it's very mature. And together with Devoteam, we did a project to switch over to the Vertex AI. And it was actually a very good experience. Not only the project with Devoteam, but also the new Vertex AI offering. And that's again part of that story of that we don't want to think about managing our all pipelines and monitoring our models. We want to focus on much more, okay, what kind of models do we want to build? What kind of business value can we bring? And so the more we can leverage the GCP, let's say, offerings also in AI now, the easier and the better for us. I mean, it can always improve, because then you're a bit, let's say, dependent on documentation and stuff like that. But let's say it's so far been a good journey. And then we are also using, because again, we want to use sort of best of class and as a service. So we've used some third-party services that's through GCP, like Datadog, instead of the logging. We don't use that much. Datadog is a bit more powerful, we find, for our use case, as well for Elasticsearch, some index searching as well. But we have a bit of a mixed experience in that. So if possible, we prefer to do the GCP because there the SLAs, etc., are a bit better for support as well. It's also about AI. So now that I look at it, I wonder if anybody knows what this is or can read this. Does anybody feel comfortable looking at this and knowing what this is? So this is from a paper called, put the things, Emergent Abilities of Large Language Models. It started last year, it's been upgraded this year, early this year. So why are we talking a lot about AI? Why, for example, as well as the whole Google I/O was mentioning AI that much? Why is it a hype? That's because the capabilities have drastically increased in the last, let's say, couple of months. So I've founded an AI company, let's say 6 years ago. I've seen my share of AI hype. Maybe I shouldn't say this one on stage because people will come back to me later and say, can you remember you said it? But it might really be that this time is different, because if we see, and even for me, I wouldn't have believed it, if you keep on scaling up these large language models, then at a certain point, they emerge capabilities that you would not expect from early on. And this is a selection of them. They now have 138. If you give them certain tasks and you ask a large language model, okay, here's the question, can you give me the answer? Then if you scale, and it's all the same x-axis, if you increase the model size, what you see is that no, they cannot do it until at one point, and it's a bit different for each kind of task. At one point, if the model is large enough, it jumps in capabilities, and it cannot just go like linear, like, it cannot do it a little bit better. No, there is a threshold, and this is often sort of an emergent capability, which is called in physics. But so suddenly there's a threshold where if it's large enough, then the model becomes capable of new things. And this is why I believe that this might be different, because there's now capabilities in these base generative large language models that can do things that even a year or a few years ago we were not expecting, which is very interesting for us. And so what have we been doing? And we've been doing a lot of it, machine learning and AI. So this is very recent, it's just a few months old. Let's say it's came a bit in an acceleration because, of course, OpenAI and GPT-4 came about and published, which then also Google, as always, sort of like the market leader with DeepMind and Google AI, are now merging to sort of catch up their offering, although they are, let's say, technologically more advanced. So what do we do with that? For example, and this is something that is live. I'm not sure if I can click, or maybe the person there can click on that. So Silverfin is a financial platform, and so we do also a lot of financial reporting. And this is a little, there's even music, I didn't know. So I'll have to stop talking, maybe that's good. That this is in Dutch. I will quickly translate what it's doing here. So it's a financial analysis based on the financial numbers. It is generating a report of the top sort of let's most impressive financial numbers, and giving not only like short explanation what it is, but also some recommendations what you do, and at the end a summary of what you can do with that. So this has changed the sort of typical way of looking, let's say, supervised or unsupervised learning. What we do at Silverfin is now it's generative AI, where it's also a different way of making these models and making sure that these models run well. In this sense, we have to do prompt engineering and different things, prompt tuning, and having different feedback mechanisms to see that these things are working well. And this is just one of the many ideas and many things that you can do with generative AI. This is just, in our case, what we do with it. This is, I have to say, this demo was done using GPT-4. We are very much in contact with Google, and we are very much hoping that we can go further with Google, because they have been typically the market, let's say, the biggest innovator. Most of the technology transformer, etc., comes out of Google. So we really want to work more with Google on this to see what can we do, can we code, and then maybe as last slide before I give it up to my. I'm going to skip this one. Before I give it to my co-presenter, is that if I don't have a crystal ball, and it's always, let's say, difficult to make a prediction. But the way I see it now is you cannot predict exactly how it's going to be in 5 years, but I do think there's going to be a difference if you look 5 years ahead about those companies that will embrace AI to the fullest and those that will not, especially in the technology sector. Maybe it's less in the making chocolate business, and that's a great business, so I hope it stays here. But in the technology sector, where we are at as well, with Silverfin, there's going to be that difference. At the moment, we are still offering, let's say, the Silverfin Assistant, our AI assistant, is like a paid package. But I think more and more is going to be, I think, what I call the Spotify effect, where if you buy Spotify, you have that recommendation already built in. That means part of the experience, part of what you buy is already being driven by AI. And just as with, let's say, Gmail, already you have the spam filter, autocomplete, and all the sort of AI sprinkles already on it. More and more technology providers are going to be looked at to say, like, what kind of AI do they give? If you have Google Meet, you will already expect, or Zoom, to have a transcript coming out. We use, even Silverfin ourselves, we use let's say, a help scout for our own help desk. We are not going to build our own support chatbot. No, we expect help scout to do that for us. We expect Salesforce to do the AI on that regard. We will have to do the AI for the accountancy, and each one of you will have to do the AI in your own company. And so that's really what I think our goal is, to bring that AI and that let us focus on bringing that AI value to our customer, in Silverfin case the accountant, so that we can use the AI, large language models, the generative AI, all the AI offering as a service from Google. And I think that thinking has now really changed, where up to a year ago, I think it was not so straightforward to get the base models out of Google and just say, like, just give us power to the base models, not ask us what the use case is going to be, just give us the raw power. And now that has happened, and I think that gives also not only the power, but also the responsibility for all of us to use that, because there will be those companies that will use it to bring value to their customers, and those that will be, I think, too late. So, and I think that's maybe a great point to give to my co-presenter. And with that, I like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you for sharing your view and preparing the ground for me. So what we'll do now is go over Gen AI, what it is, what you can do with it, how you can fine-tune. We'll come back to that. We'll also manage a little bit expectations around it. So try to debunk the hype, right? There's a lot of expectations, of hopes that comes with it. But in actuality, what can you do with it? So we'll start with a definition, right? So generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence that can create a wide variety of data, such as images, videos, audio, text, and 3D models. Now, what's truly important about Gen AI is that it really differs from the usual predictive AI that we've all known for years now, in that it can create a lot of content, so it has way more creativity. It can generate, really, it's in the name, a lot of stuff. And so you want to take advantage of that, as with predictive AI, you still need some technical knowledge, technical skills to build a model and leverage the benefits that come with it. Whereas with Gen AI, it's already accessible, and there is a little bit of tweaking to do, perhaps, to make it fit with your use case, but it's way easier to access its benefits. So I will try to compare Gen AI with some things that you are all familiar with, and we'll start with the image compression. So you've all known this topic for decades now. So it can either be lossy or lossless, right? So it can either lose some relevant information from the image in the compression process, or it doesn't. So how does it actually tie in with artificial intelligence? Well, you have your training data, which has a specific size. In this case, for Gen AI, it's roughly, let's say, the size of the internet, or rather the text base behind it. And you have your AI model. So you can imagine that there will be some difference in the size of the original data set and the model on the second hand. But do you have any idea on what the size of the data set would be, roughly? No? Maybe? No. So it's around 45 terabytes. So I was actually surprised at how small it was, maybe. I would have imagined something bigger. And then, second question, what do you think it would result in terms of model size? Like, what would be the compression rate? 90%? I didn't think, I shouldn't have talked about the rate, but probably something like this. So it's a little bit below. It's a little bit below 1 terabyte. But you can imagine then the next question that we might ask ourselves is, well, do we lose information or not in this process? And then moving on to what it actually means for us, what is the implication of either case? So if this AI compression, let's say, is lossy, that means that the LLM, so the large language model, is not truthful, right? It did lose some information in the process. It cannot know 100% of its training data. On the other hand, if it's lossless, that means that it knows it all, the training data, it can recite it, but that doesn't mean that it's truthful either, right? Remember, we use internet. We all know that we need to take care in how we treat the information coming from the internet. So there is a lot of fake information on the internet that it will have trained on. So it will make errors. So a little bit of expectation management here. It's not 100% of the time correct. It never is in AI. So as Ken said, it's not going to completely replace any task. The human will still have the final judgment over the output of what the model gives. But yeah, it's going to still deliver a lot of values, I believe, in any business, depending on the use cases, of course. Now, here, I want to move on to what it was actually trained for. So there is a lot of hype around, okay, it can do anything, right? We can just generate whatever stuff we're interested into with this technology, but what is at the root? What was the initial goal under the hood? It was to train. To be trained to predict the most likely tokens that follow within a given context. So yeah, this graph-like image that you see is just to represent that within a text, the next tokens are the next characters or words. And so for each of those, it will try to generate, it will predict the most likely series of words that will follow. So you can imagine that there is a lot of predictions because it will try to predict a lot of words for each word. So you can imagine how that grows and how how the complexity of this task can be. And an oversimplification, let's say, of this process would be to compare that to the auto-completion feature that's on your phone that you've known for years. except that instead of one word, it's way more words, and instead of, well, whatever data was used, in this case, it's way more huge. Now, we do not highlight this predict the most likely tokens for nothing. Yeah, I think you all know that ML in general is based around statistics. So each model that you have will make some predictions using probabilities, using statistics, meaning that its goal is to reduce the errors. So if it's to reduce the errors, you will still have some errors, right? You cannot expect it to be 100% of the time correct. So, but then does that mean that it's lossy? Because if it makes errors, well, it kind of has lost information in the process, right? I'll leave that question hanging. And then the last thing that I would like to compare it with would be us. Us as humans have what is called reasoning. So, for example, in mathematics, you do not need to know everything about mathematics to solve every possible equations. You know the basics, you know the rules, and you can extrapolate from it to solve any unseen problems, right? In the same sense, the LLM does not need to have an infinite amount of neurons to be able to solve unseen tasks. So it will develop what is called side skills. So these side skills are, as it's written there, the skills that they were not trained specifically for. And of course, you do not need infinite amount of neurons to develop these, but as the model grows, and as we've seen on Ken's slide with all these graphs, it will still become smarter, right? And by the way, this growing tree animation that we see below is actually the side skills capability of Palm as a function of the number of parameters that it was given. So you can see that indeed, the more you give parameters to the model, the more smarter it becomes. But also the wider the general knowledge, let's say, it can learn. Now, I'd like also to discuss how to take advantage of GenAI. We mainly discussed right now the text-based use case, right? We've seen the size of the text-based data set, but it doesn't end there. There's also image generation, video generation, any kind of content, which, by the way, is always about predicting the most likely tokens that will follow. Whether it's a word, whether it's a pixel, that depends on the training data that you provide. So here it's actually a picture that was generated by Midjourney, which is also an image generation model. And so basically what I meant to say here is that you need to use it for what it's worth, so for its creativity. You do not need to trust whatever it's going to generate, but you can be inspired by it. You can use it for help as a brainstorming best buddy, for example, as we say here. So really do not be afraid of just taking whatever information you feel is relevant to your application. But specifically, what we think is the best way of using it is to use it as a subject matter expert. And there I will maybe spend a little bit more time on this slide. But a problem of the LLMs, maybe you've all heard of it, is the hallucination. It is not always a problem, but it might be a problem. And it's basically, it happens when your model will confidently give you some information that is just completely false. We've seen that ourselves when testing the model out. It would just show some fake documentation that doesn't exist, say, okay, this feature is actually present where it never was. So this kind of situations you do want to avoid. And this can be done by limiting the scope of your model, and then it can become really good. And you limit the scope of an LLM by providing a specific context, which, by the way, can be even the power of the LLM can be even better if you fine-tune it with your own data. and also in that case, Google is SOC compliant, is RGPD compliant, so you don't need to worry about your data being at risk while doing so. I was hesitating, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I guess you've all heard about ChatGPT leaking some information about. I think it was Samsung meeting notes. That should not happen with GenAI. And so you can have different use cases, different applications with that in mind. You can have a very specific and very efficient personal assistant. You can use it to extract information from a document. So in this case, to limit the scope, for example, you would provide the schema of whatever you want to extract. Let's say you give it some invoices and you say, well, the schema is this field, the invoice ID, the total amount, the currency, and so on and so forth. And it will extract the data from the PDF, the image, whatever, while following the schema, the context that you provided. You can also use it for advisory shopping. So, for example, that's one example that we've presented in pre-sales meeting a few times already. You give it a context. You are an advisor for suit shopping. You have access to this catalog, and then you copy-paste the catalog from your favorite suit shop. And you will, in the prompt, say, okay, I'm going to a wedding this time of the year. It will likely be sunny. And perhaps you can give it some more information. What do you recommend? And you need to get some recommendations from the catalog that you provided in the context. That works out quite well. And so it's really imagination here is the limit, right? You just need to scope to whatever you want it to be used for, and that's about it. Now, I'd like to end off on a kind of a philosophical point of view, which is you can either choose to focus on the errors that are generated, knowing that all kind of ML models will generate errors, or you can, as Silverfin does, you can choose to focus on the value it can bring in any potential area that you would see it fit. And that's about it for this short introduction to GenAI. Thank you for hearing me out. Yeah. Does anyone else have any question? Perhaps? Yes? Mike is coming.
Just kind of adapt. Do you work for Silverfin, or before I make a question that might
do I work for Silverfin? No, I work with Devoteam G Cloud.
Okay, sorry. The questions it's mostly knowing that the hallucination is currently the biggest problem, and even Microsoft has said that despite the grounding they are doing with the data and all the fine-tuning, they're still facing that specific issue. Do you see a future where we can use GPT-4, maybe GPT-5 in production applications directly in contact with customers? So the chatbot replacement, as they say, in fields like healthcare or pharmacy, where the risk and it's quite high from the standpoint of compliance and governance, where bad answer could effectively destroy a company due to the legal impact of it.
Yeah, and kill someone, yeah. So I don't think that would happen, because then it's just misuse of the service. But to your question, first, I don't know what the future will be like, for sure. But I think that it would not be smart to put these kinds of models, or any AI model, generally speaking, into a position where it just makes decision and we trust it blindly. And it's not just the case for GenAI. Also, other types of document understanding systems like Document AI is something that I have worked quite a lot with last year. There is a review system that is in place. So we could think of something similar with GenAI, so that we just do not trust it blindly. Now, to bounce back on what you said about hallucination, it's not always a bad thing. So it can be used as a way of exploring new things that you haven't thought of. Again, it depends on the use case, right? So you don't want to explore whatever in the medical area, whatever would be the proper protocol to use. No, but it depends on the use case. I hope that answers.
If I can also add a few points to that, I think with Silverfin we don't face luckily life or death situations, but we have hundreds, thousands of companies that rely on us for proper, let's say, putting on their financial numbers, tax statements, and advisory for the. So it's not life or death, but let's say it's relate to your question. It's like, does the company go bankrupt or not? So it is, let's say, important decisions in that regard. I think it's a lot of things. First of all, there is a research aspect to it. We have to get better into letting the model know what it can say, what it knows and what it doesn't know. That's one of the main open questions that I'm sure Google and they have stated that, and as well OpenAI are looking at. It's not about knowing what you know, it's also knowing what you don't know. So that's an open research question. There are already a lot of techniques that you can use today to circumvent that. So there's techniques, first of all, to have a second model to sort of judge what's the first model outcome. There's techniques that you can say, retrieval of data, that you say like, this is the external data that I've shown that which I base my information on. So there's a lot of, and I think there's a lot of, GCP now has that service as well, where you embed, which means sort of a text embedding of all your, whatever it be. It could be financial data in our case, but it could be any documents or images, whatever, and that you search in that embedding and you match the most likely, give that back to the model and you say, okay, given these inputs, there's other techniques where you can go, it's like, okay, you have this answer, but can you explain this answer? And that's a funny thing, because for many years we've been thinking about explainability in machine learning and AI. So, and that was also on my slide. It's about trust also. How do you convey that trust? Trust is about, first of all, people using it for a while, easy, but also trying to have a glimpse on what does this model tell me and where does this come from, sort of opening up the hood of the car to see what's inside. And what you want to do is explain to a human a bit how something complex as large language models works. Now, it happens to be that large language models by themselves are designed with reinforcement learning with human feedback, are designed to convey that information in a human understandable way. So actually having also, again, a large language model tell you how it came to be on that answer, but in a way that only moves the question that, but how do you know that language model is not hallucinating? So it becomes a very interesting research. There's a lot of avenues here. There's a lot of things that can be done, that are being done. It's part of it is a research thing, part of it is a production thing, and part of it I think is also, and that's a bit I think understated here, but it makes sense because we're at GP, it's a UX thing. So it's about how do you convey that information. So in our example that I show, we don't let the user reply and ask for more information. No, we say like, this is what you can do with. In some other things, I don't show it. We don't say, yeah, this is it. We give like, if we are certain of it, we just present it. If we're uncertain, we give like an exclamation mark, like have a little view. So also the UX, how do you convey that uncertainty to the user and have them interact with the model, will build more trust and will have them use it more. And in the end, yeah, we will see what it will be in 5 years, but where we are now, it's already a huge time saving. It's already a huge impact. So I think it will only get better at this point. Hope that answers your question. Is er nog een micro?
Do we still have time?
Ah, yeah.
Okay.
So how does BART compare to ChatGPT?
I will leave that question to the Googler that will come later. I'll drop that bomb there.
That's fine.
So from our side, we have been using so GPT. But are you first one to have your colleague answer it, or? Oh no, sorry. So we've been using well, not BART, but using the Bison model that's behind. we do see it's a bit more fluent at the moment, but we also see that the Bison model is improving very, very quickly. Some of the code reasoning parts were I think initially better in GPT-4, but Google has been releasing this or has announced these specific codey kind of models as well. So I would say it's minimal differences at the moment. I think the embedding is slightly better still with GPT-4, but that's also because there is the big embedding at the Google as is it public now or is in testing? Only the small, the Gecko. I think the Bison, because of the model size, will be better. So I think it's minimal. So I think probably there are going to be other considerations, like if you think which one shall I use for the coming years. I think we can presume, or we at least presume at Silverfin that Google will have the same, let's say, and I think it's also one of the other presenter here saying there's other considerations. It's more like, data privacy. Where do you run it? Where is it available? This sort of services. What they're going to do with it more than is the quality. I don't think the quality will be that much different going forward to base your decision on.